I sat on the bed. The bathroom door was open. I saw something peeking out. Something inside the mirror was peeking out with its hands pressed against the glass. I got up and ran, and the only thing I could do was close the door. Very good evening to the best community on the internet. Hello to everyone who is part of the Relatos de la Noche community. I hope you're in the best mood possible to listen to the following 7 short stories about the paranormal. And if not, what if something's still pending, some worry lingering? We'll make you forget about it right now, but it won't be free. We're going to change that feeling into fear, into the terror that one of the following stories might become real. Because these are very, very close experiences, encounters with the supernatural. They won't take us to a faraway place, to an old mansion, or to a castle in some European country. The following stories take place in those places you visit and live in every day. So be careful. Because if it's not in this episode, I'm sure that very soon there will be one in which you will be the protagonists of night stories. Hello, community. My name is New Calpin. I'm from New Calpin Municipality and commute daily to work in Mexico City. That's why I use public transportation, specifically the minibus, for the last part of my journey. For those who don't know, a minibus is a kind of small bus. It's a size that's used in almost every big city, but I think it's called something different everywhere. The dangerous thing here with these in particular is that they're driven at high speeds to compete for passengers among themselves. But you get used to the bumps, the sudden stops, and the sharp turns. I recall this happened on a Monday. It was a busy season at the office. I left late, but I ran to catch the subway and after that the bus, hurrying to get home. It was very late, so I would hardly get any sleep. In a few hours, I'd have to get up, shower, and try to be on time again. Repeat my day. That's what I was thinking about on the minibus. Tired from that day, and tired because of what was coming the next day when I noticed it was almost empty. I've nearly reached the end of the route, so traveling at that time feels almost normal. But this time there was something I didn't like, something that started to make me uncomfortable. I noticed that through the mirror, the driver kept turning to look at me constantly. I began going through my things. I didn't have the pepper spray that had been in my bag for years, hoping I'd never need it. Who knows when I removed it? Then a man got off who was sitting in a seat behind the driver, and the driver kept looking at me in the mirror. I was sitting about halfway down the bus. I quickly turned to look around me, and there was only one other passenger left. In the last row, next to the window, there was an older lady. She wasn't going to be much help, but even so, I sat sideways and kept glancing at her, hoping she wouldn't get up and ask to get off, because then I didn't know what I was going to do. Should I get off with her too? In the middle of a street I didn't know. Hey girl, if you want, move over here a bit, the driver suddenly said. That gave me chills, and I told him it was fine, that I was about to get off soon. I occasionally saw him in the mirror, and each time his eyes grew more anxious. I had to do something, so I decided to get up and walk to the back, to stand close to the lady next to the door. But when I stood up, the lady in the last row was already gone. I was confused. She didn't look strange. She was just a woman, an old lady who came in with her eyes closed. I screamed, and the driver braked, yelled at me to get out with him, and exited the car. He told me not to stay alone. He stayed at the door waiting for me, and at that moment, I ran toward him. He was a somewhat chubby man. He was sweating, nervous. That anxious look had seemed threatening to me before. It suddenly turned into an innocent, almost childlike one. Once we got off the minibus, I almost had to calm him down. "Did you notice the lady didn't come?" She suddenly appeared. This is the second time she's joined me. She told me, and I felt as if someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. A ghost had just appeared to me. I didn't know what to say. The driver tried to calm down, apologized, and said we should keep going. He would hurry to drop me off since it was already late. So I got in and sat in the seat closest to him, and I didn't dare look back anymore. He would glance at the mirror overseeing his minibus and occasionally try to calm me. "No one's coming anymore. No one's coming. No one's coming at all." I got home safely, but was very scared. Sometimes I run into that driver again. We greet each other with a look, although, of course, we never talk. I haven't seen anything else, and I hope he hasn't. When I run into him late, I quickly move to the front seats. When I get off, he asks me to take good care of myself, and even though I'm not a believer, I always tell him to go with God for the rest of his route. A few years ago, when I finished high school, I looked for work everywhere so I could help out at home. I ended up finding a job at a motel where I later realized hardly anyone wanted to work anymore. When I arrived on my first day, we noticed that a lady was training 3 new people, including me, who would be helping on the night shift. A guy, Benny, a girl named Raina, and me. It was a roadside motel, one of those you pay for by the hour, in the middle of a boulevard. Very busy during the day, but very lonely at night. Only a gas station was nearby, about 100 meters from the motel. We asked him why they had changed the staff all at the same time and why we were accompanying him. All new people on that shift, and the lady said that's what she needed to discuss with us. Something had happened in one of the rooms. Something very bad, something terrible, a crime. That room, number 45, couldn't be used. Even if sometimes the place was full, we understood, and it was somewhat obvious. Maybe it's still a crime scene and something needed to be investigated. So we started the shift as normally as we could. Only 2 rooms were occupied. Mrs. Encargada suddenly came up to tell me that she was going out for a while and would be back in a few hours. Since I didn't know how it worked and thought it was normal, I told her it was fine and didn't suspect anything. Before leaving, she reminded me that there was no cleaning staff, that Benny had to go check the rooms when they were vacated, and that Raina and I should stay at the entrance. At the front desk, Raina and I started talking. Benny took care of all the tasks and then came over to us. Everything was really boring. We had a view from there, just a section of that deserted boulevard in the middle of nowhere, where no one passed by anymore. The phone rang. They requested a couple of beers from one of the occupied rooms. The voice sounded very young. It was a boy. Almost nervously, Benny took them. We kept going like that for almost another hour, bored, talking about what had brought us to that place, to end up working in a motel. Our stories, although different, had enough similar situations for us to understand each other well, enough to have empathy. The phone rang again. The guy, nervous, asked us for a couple of more beers. He sounded even more anxious than the last time. This time, Raina, even though it wasn't her turn, decided to take them. When she returned, she looked amused and said she had seen the guy and his companion, a woman much older than him. She said he seemed shy and nervous, as if it was his first time in a place like that. Benny and I laughed, though we were nearly the boy's age. phone rang again. We laughed, expecting the boy to order another beer, and Rena replied, "Reception. How can I help you?" said Rena. "Reception, good evening. Can I offer you anything else?" Rena smiled and repeated, imagining how nervous the boy must be. But I saw that the light that turned on wasn't from the same room. The indicator showed that they were talking to us from room 45. He signaled to Rena so she'd see. Benny was in there with us. We were so quiet that we could all hear the breathing on the line. They hung up. Benny's job was to check, but we didn't let him go alone. We were so scared we decided to go, not to split up. We went inside down a hallway with doors to all the rooms. We opened the one that led to room 45. The room's door was closed. Everything smelled like dust. No one had been there for a long time. Everything was dark. It was strange. We clearly felt someone was inside. We went back to the front office and Benny just picked up his things. He said there was no way he was going to stay there. And so, 2 hours after starting his shift, he took his things and left. We just watched him walk away down that deserted boulevard. It looked creepy, yes, but probably not as creepy as staying there. I asked Rena what she wanted. She said she wouldn't return the next night, but that she just couldn't leave work like that in the middle of her shift. We sent a message to the lady. We told her what happened, that we were scared and that Benny had left. She didn't ask us anything. She just told us to wait a bit longer until she returned. One of us could leave, the other should stay to help her finish the shift, and she would pay us for a couple of days. In the end, both of us stayed there. Nothing else happened after that. The lady didn't want to explain anything to us either, but there was something in the way she understood. She let us know that it wasn't the first or the last time that had happened to her. We kept our word. We didn't go back. I never heard from Rena or Benny again. The motel later closed, and sometime after I passed by and saw it open again, remodeled with a different name. You, the community, do you think those manifestations will go away over time, or do you still feel something strange there? Do you think something could still happen in room 45? I've been listening to Relatos de la Noche since February, but ever since I started, I haven't been able to stop. I think that's why I got the courage to share this story, which isn't anything spectacular. I don't think it's the scariest thing you've ever heard either, but I'll let you be the judge. In early 2024, my girlfriend's uncle visited us. He lives in a town near the city about 3 hours away, and he has a couple of cabins that he rents out seasonally on an app. During that visit, before heading to the airport, as he was leaving the country for a couple of months, he left them the keys to one of those cabins, told them they could go whenever they wanted, that it didn't have heating at that time, and that's why he wasn't offering it to tourists on Airbnb. At that time, I was going through a difficult stage. I had to deliver a very important project at work, but I couldn't concentrate. I lived with 2 roommates I no longer got along with, and we argued constantly at home. I told my girlfriend, and her dad, who overheard the conversation, reminded her that they had the keys to the cabin. He said I could go there for a few days to finish my project. There was no signal or good internet, but I actually thought that could help me. To be completely disconnected, to focus on writing. That's why I agreed. I put the address in the global positioning system and drove there. And yes, the cabin was far away, very far from the city, but also once you got past the town. When I arrived, I realized there was nothing around, no other cabins nearby, no stores, not even the main road. The little signal they told me about was actually nothing. Intermittence. Sometimes the phone connected, other times it didn't. Suddenly, all my pending messages arrived at once. I'd reply, but it took minutes for them to send. I opened the windows to let some air in. The place smelled musty, like old wood, but I'm not too picky about those things. As soon as I settled in, I turned on the computer and tried to work. And I was so tired from the trip and from the days of stress that at some point, without realizing it, I just fell asleep with my head on the keyboard. Until my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a second, but I answered and heard a very strange voice that very slowly said to me,
"Don't forget to close the windows."
I felt a chill run down my back. I turned around, the windows were still open. I got up and closed them immediately, but I didn't understand anything. Who had called me? There was no one nearby. There was no way anyone could be watching me. No one knew I was there, only my girlfriend and her dad, and they wouldn't have done something like that. I locked everything up, grabbed my things, got in the car, and went back to town. I stayed in a small hotel, but at least there, for the next 2 days, I was able to finish my work. I never told my girlfriend that I wasn't able to spend a single night in that cabin. I've just refused every time she suggests we could go for a weekend. That she still has a copy of the keys, that the invitation is still open. I don't know how to tell her that I'd rather never get close again. Hello, community. I've already shared a couple of stories here, and one of them was featured on the show in 2020 during the pandemic. What I want to tell you happened a little after that. We stayed overnight at my mom's cousin's house because of a family emergency. It wasn't far, but some unexpected events made us stay with relatives. It was already very late, and they decided it was better for us to stay nearby, on the street behind, in that house. I had to sleep in the kids' room, who weren't there that night. They told me to settle in there, and that if I needed anything, my mom would be in the room next door. The room was fine, but there was something I really didn't like at all. The window looked out onto the back of a Christian church. It was a very small yard, with some dry grass and a fence. I lowered the thick, dark curtains that didn't let any light through. Those blackout ones, I don't like them. I hate it when morning comes and I can't see the light, but I preferred to close them rather than look at that scene, which for some reason made me uncomfortable. There's something about churches, all of them, from any religion, that scare me at night. That contrast. During the day, they're full of people celebrating God. It seemed to me that at night, when they're empty, they became the opposite. Anyway, just my thoughts, but I closed the window, turned off the light, and tried to sleep. When morning came, I was woken up by the sound of a child playing, as if he was running back and forth behind the window, in the church. Laughing, playing alone, making noises like a little car. I was lying down, but my eyes were still closed. I didn't want to open them. I just wanted to go back to sleep, but the child wouldn't stop making noise.
You damn kid. Always with your antics.
Suddenly, I heard a woman approaching. She started scolding him, first quietly and then louder. She was scolding him really harshly, yelling at him, and then I heard the sounds of hitting. I got angry, got out of bed, and opened the curtain. I wanted that woman to see that someone was listening to her, to know that she wasn't alone, to make her stop.
Shut up, kid, damn it, damn kid.
But as soon as I touched the curtain, as soon as I lifted it, everything fell apart. There was no sound. When I opened the curtain, I realized it was still night. In front of me was that courtyard behind the church, completely dark. There was absolutely no one there. I went straight to my mom's room. I didn't say anything. I just asked if I could stay with her. And even though my mom didn't ask me anything, the next day she told me she didn't like sleeping in that house, that it always gave her weird vibes. I told her then. My mom told me that in certain places, on some nights, you can hear the voices of the dead. Thank you for staying here, community. And don't forget to let us know in this space and on social media if you also like short stories. We really like stories with a lot of information, stories that let us get to know a family, a town, or a moment in time very well. But every now and then, it's also interesting to give space to those that get straight to the point, that are direct. So also, if you have one like that, don't hesitate to share it. Remember that all your stories are welcome. For now, the intermission is over. It's time to continue because there are still 2 more stories left. Tonight, hello community. I'm sharing something with you for the first time. I'm 20 years old, but what I'm about to tell you happened when I was 10. I've never forgotten it, not even a little bit. It's one of those things that stays with you even if no one ever talks to you about it again. At that time, I lived with my parents and my younger sister Ingrid, but my dad had another son from a previous relationship, Jorge, who was much older than us. He was 15 years older than me. When he turned 18, he left the house, and since then we saw him very little. He lived from city to city. He always found some job more or less good. He had that talent for always landing on his feet. He would stay there for a while and then disappear again. By the time this happened, we hadn't heard from him for almost 2 years, and one day, out of nowhere, we saw him walk through the door. At night, he brought a bag of gifts for my sister and me. My mom nearly fainted when she saw him. Though not her son, she always loved him like one. She left us with him in the living room and told him to wait there, that she was going to look for my dad. He had gone out to help a neighbor with his car. He hadn't taken his phone, but he was nearby, so we stayed talking with him in the living room, excited to see him again. We asked if he would stay with us, and he said yes, at least for a few days, but yes.
Jorge.
We heard a voice we had never heard before. Very clear. It was coming from the second floor. The voice was coming from my parents' empty bedroom. We went silent. Ingrid and I looked at each other. There was no one else at home. No one else. My brother also went silent, but his expression changed, as if he had recognized the voice. He stood and told us to go outside. We nervously followed him, and outside he met my dad, who was already coming back for him. Jorge didn't tell him anything about what happened, and my dad was so happy that he said we should all have dinner together. He bought the chicken he loved as a kid. After dinner, Jorge said he was going to sleep in the living room and that he'd see us in the morning, but he didn't stay. At some point during the early morning, he left. He didn't leave a note, he didn't say anything, he just left. He doesn't have social media. Since that day, I've only seen him 2 more times, and since I don't live with my parents anymore either, well, it's getting harder and harder to see each other. But someday, I'm going to do it. Someday, I'm going to ask him about that voice, about what we heard, about why I call him by his name. 'Cause Ingrid and I heard it, we both heard it. We talk about it from time to time, and now we both want to share that memory with you. We know it was real. I remember that when I was a child, I went with my mom and my aunt to visit a lady who, as they told us, was going to give my mom some remedies. She had a very strong stomach pain that wouldn't go away with anything, and someone recommended her to go see that lady. The house was far away, and from the moment we entered the property, I knew it was different from any I had visited before. It was big, really big, like a mansion from a soap opera, but old, very old. One of those that seemed to speak of a wealth that is long gone. The yard was huge. I remember the car drove about 30 meters from the gate to the door. That whole path was surrounded by dry plants, as if at some point the garden had been very beautiful, but not anymore. And it was there, right there as we were arriving, that I saw her, a little girl. She ran beside the car through the plants, waving at me. I waved back at her, surprised, and then she hid among the bushes. We went into the house. The lady was waiting for us in the dining room. It was one of those very dark wooden dining rooms, heavy with tall chairs. She was sitting at the head of the table. She looked very old. She didn't get up to greet us. She just gestured to us with her hand. But what caught my attention the most was the boy who was behind her. A boy of about 12 years old, very pale and tall, but with a child's face. He was standing right behind the chair as if he were watching over her. My mom and aunt started talking to the lady. I didn't understand anything. They were talking about herbs, baths, things I wasn't interested in. So I asked if I could go out to play. No. She told me without looking at me, and I said I just wanted to get the girl in the garden, the one walking among the plants. Just to say hello, the lady turned to look at me then, for the first time during the visit. She frowned. "There is no girl here," she told me. And that's when I saw the boy open his eyes wide, as if he had been frightened. He shook his head and told me no. Slowly and clearly, he gestured to tell me, "Don't talk about that." I felt a chill all over my body. I was very little, but I understood. I understood what was happening. I had seen something I shouldn't have. I had just seen a ghost. When we left there, I didn't say anything. I was quiet, thinking about the girl and the boy. I asked my mom if she'd seen the girl, but she said no, neither when we arrived nor when we left. She told me there was no girl in that house. And from what she told me later, I understood that that lady wasn't a healer, that we had gone to see a witch. But that's not where the story ends. Not long ago, many years later, but just recently, I remembered all of this. I wanted to tell you this story. I was talking with my mom and my aunt, the three of us who went that day, and I told them that I could never forget that visit. That I wanted to send my experience to a podcast I trusted to tell my story. As we went over everything, we agreed on almost every detail, except for one. They didn't see any child. The lady was delayed by the pale boy who was behind her chair. The one who looked at me so seriously, the one who gave me that warning gesture. They didn't see him. He wasn't there. And almost 20 years later, I realized that it wasn't just one that afternoon. That afternoon, I saw two ghosts. Hello, community. This is my first time writing to you. I've listened to night stories for over a year and always wanted to share, but never dared. That happened to me recently. It was brief, but I still can't explain it. And even though the object that I think caused it is no longer here, I can't stop thinking that maybe it wasn't the object itself that was wrong, but this place. I'm writing to you from here to see what you all think. It all started with my daughter. She's 7 years old. She's a very good girl, calm, very imaginative, but very kind-hearted. I've never feared being alone. She used to stay in her room playing and falling asleep easily. Then she suddenly began saying strange things. Initially, she didn't take it seriously. She told me she didn't want to go to the bathroom or brush her teeth alone and would rather do it in my room. I thought it was just laziness, that she just wanted to avoid brushing her teeth, but it wasn't just once or twice anymore. It happened nightly now. She took her toothbrush, cup, toothpaste, and everything into my bathroom. I asked her what was going on. She said her reflection would say mean things to her in the mirror. I told her that was impossible, that a reflection can't talk, that she probably dreamed it, or it was just her imagination. But she wouldn't listen to me, as if what I was saying didn't make any sense. But then she started sleeping badly. She would wake up in the middle of the night. She would come to my bed with me. Until she just started sleeping there from the beginning, she would bring her blanket, her dolls, and she didn't want to go back to her room anymore. I wanted to calm her down, so I told her that I would sleep with her that night, that she would see nothing would happen, and I did. That night I lay beside her in her small bed. She fell asleep quickly. I was dozing off too, but something woke me. It was a light tap, like tapping on glass, very softly, twice. I opened my eyes confused. I thought my daughter had gotten up, but when I turned, I felt her there by my side. I sat up slowly. The bathroom door was open. From there, I saw her. A figure, a girl, identical to my daughter, peeking out from the darkness of the bathroom with her hands pressed against the mirror glass, watching in silence. I got up without thinking, walked to the bathroom door, and closed it. I didn't want to look anymore. I didn't want to check anything. The next morning, as soon as it was dawn, I tore the mirror off the bathroom wall. It was one of those big ones stuck to the wall. I removed it as best as I could, took it out of my house, and left it on the street. That day, the garbage truck passed by. But the garbage truck never picked it up. Someone took it before that. I don't know who. I just know it wasn't there when I came back to check. Now, I don't know what to think. I don't know if that thing was in the mirror and left with him, or if the mirror was just the medium. And what manifests is still here in this house, even though it no longer has a medium to show itself.